Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we'll explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, another exciting episode this week. And I am excited this week to be talking to another one of my colleagues and new friends from across the pond, as we jokingly love to say here in the States, but over in the UK, another one of my exciting new friends from over in the UK. And really looking forward to this conversation. Anna and I have been talking for some time about being on the show. And so here we are. You know, timing is always going to happen when it needs to happen. And so this is exciting. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to hand it over to Anna Sudbury, who is in the United Kingdom. And Anna, before you kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself, tell us how you'd like to be known.
Paul, hello. Thank you. I love having friends in Northern California. It's freezing here in the UK, so I can pretend there are palm trees and sunshine.
Well, we can too. It's cold here right now.
Oh, don't burst my bubble. California's got to be Katy Perry and beaches and sunshine, but maybe one day. How would I like to be known? I'm Anna. I'm she, her, my pronouns. I'm a midlife mum. I've got 2 boys. I'm into joy. I'm into simple pleasures. I want to be known for being friendly and fun and caring and thoughtful. Whether or not I am or not, who knows? What do I love? I love being outside. I love seeing trees, sea and sky. I love chatting and swapping stories. And I'm a little bit nervous, Paul, that we're never going to stop. We're just going to keep going. I love hanging out with people who fill my cup.
Okay.
I'm a talker. I'm a texter. I'm a hugger. I like making people laugh, and I hate making people feel bad. I worry too much about what people think of me. And we were just talking about a previous podcast you did on that topic that really spoke to me. I hate mess and clutter. I kill my houseplants all the time, and I love my dog. That is everything you need to know about me, who I am, and how I want to be known.
Wonderful. Well, and said with conviction, energy, and enthusiasm. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that infuses itself in the conversation that's going to follow as well. So nice.
I am known for my energy, actually. If people describe me, they often use that word, energetic. I was once described as the most energetic person somebody knew. And I don't think energy is really positive normally, right? But actually, I think that person sounds exhausting. So I'm probably exhaustingly energetic. But if I can channel that energy in the right direction, it's a superpower.
For sure. Well, and we all have the things, right? The things that make us who we are, and those things serve us 80% of the time. I'm making these numbers up, right? And kind of work against us 20% of the time. They can certainly, as I've learned doing different types of personality assessments and instruments and things like that, there's your strengths, right? And they can be overused and they can be underused, right? So it's not a matter of them being good or bad or right or wrong. It's just a matter of kind of the degree to which we bring these things into our lives and use them, right? I suspect, and I'm excited to find out that your energy level very much serves you much of your life.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Nice. Anna, one of the things that I do before we get into the 5 questions that we use in every episode with every guest, I like to start by saying, what intention would you have for yourself during our conversation today?
I want to have fun. I love conversation. I love talking. Having fun doesn't mean we won't go deep. It doesn't mean we won't cover topics that are personal and perhaps painful. But it does mean we will come out of this with a smile on our face and having shared stories that will bring us both something moving forward. I don't expect us to be laughing our heads off over the next 45 minutes. I don't mean that sort of fun, but I just want this to be a pleasurable experience that we both get something from, and hopefully some listeners get something from. But, you know, if you have, I'm sure you have a ton of listeners, but let's say nobody dials into this particular episode, as long as you and I have got something out of it, that's what I'm here for.
Oh, I like that. Like focusing on what's in front of us first. And if others benefit from it, then that's kind of the bonus, is what I'm hearing
Oh my
you
God,
say.
of course.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
If I'm thinking about other people, then I'm going to perform, right? And I don't want to perform. I just want to have a lovely chat with my friend Paul and see what we cover.
Oh, this resonates so true with some other things and themes that are happening in my life right now. So I love that you said that. My intention is to support you in that and to create a space for you to be able to have fun and cover the topics and go in as deep as you want to, and for us to get something out of it, and to do exactly what you said, which is make it possible for others to be able to hear your story, to be able to connect with the parts of the story that resonate with them, and that someone out there, or many someone's out there, will be inspired by what you have to say and share with us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear what we're going to be talking about. As always, you and I haven't really talked about what you're going to be sharing with us. So, and as always, I ask the same 5 questions. So let's jump in with the first question. Anna, where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life?
I love this question, and I've thought quite a lot about the punctuation of it. Was it a comma? Was it a semicolon? And then I realised I was being ridiculous. I was sat on a comma when I was sat on a plane. It was May 2019. It was a bank holiday, which is a public holiday in the UK. So I'd been to Guernsey, which is a small island, kind of between the UK and France, beachside. We'd hung out with some friends. They've got kids the same age as our kids. We had a really great time, but it was a very boozy weekend. And it came off the back of a very boozy few weeks in the office. I work in advertising. At that point, I was wining and dining clients a lot. We had a lot of team drinks, team outings. I've been in advertising over 20 years now. And for all of those 20 years, a lot of what I've done has been based around wining and dining people. And I never thought it would be possible to do my job and be good at my job without that element. So I'm sat on that plane. We've got up early to catch the plane. I've got my 2 children kind of climbing all over me. I'm trying to keep them well behaved so I don't annoy other people on the plane. And I have the hangover from hell. And not only is it the hangover from hell, but it's like the culmination of several weeks of hangover. And I just feel tired. And the air hostess is going down. She's offering tea, coffee, but also beer, wine, whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I just need a break from the alcohol. And bearing in mind, it's Monday, right? Because it's a public holiday. So it's not even a weekend, but I go, I will make it to the next weekend without having a drink. That's only 4 days. But at the time, it felt massive. And so I was stuck on that comma thinking, there are 2 ways I can go. I can keep doing this. I can keep drinking too much. And I don't label myself an alcoholic, but I was definitely drinking in a way that wasn't serving me, in a way that a lot of frazzled, tired mums drink. We drink at the end of the day because we're exhausted by our kids. We drink at the end of the work day because that's how we signpost that it's 6 o'clock and we can put the computer down and start putting the kids to bed. It was a reward. It was a friend. Alcohol was a relaxant. It formed many roles, but I suddenly realized it was not serving me. And to cut a very long story short, I made it to that Friday and I added on the weekend, and I didn't have a drink that weekend. And at that point, it's really interesting. So we're recording this in early January. So for anyone doing dry January who's listening, you'll know this. Kind of 7 to 10 days in, you're like, oh my God, this feels really good. This feels really good. So I started getting the really good feelings, and my skin was clearer and my stomach was flatterer. And yes, I know that makes me vain. And I was sleeping really, really well. Sleeping really well, which as the mum of 2 kids is really amazing. And so that kind of 7 days then turned into a month, and I've done a month without alcohol. And that continued. And now I'm nearly 5 years sober, all because I got off that comma that I sat on when I sat on that plane.
That's amazing. And first of all, I want to acknowledge you and commend you for that, because that's a big leap for a lot of people. And to make it 7 days is a huge accomplishment, as you know, and make it 7 weeks, make it 7 months, and then much less 5 years. That's huge. That's amazing.
Do you know what? It is huge. It is huge because society tells us that drinking is cool, and all the Christmas movies we've all just watched tell us drinking is cool, and all the social events we go to tell us drinking is cool. And whilst sobriety and being sober curious is very much a zeitgeisty movement now. The weight of alcohol, the weight of the big alcohol industries there's more money spent on alcohol advertising than there is on any other vertical. There's a lot of messaging out there telling us that we should be drinking. And for me, I worked out I shouldn't be drinking. This is not how I want to lead my life. This is not how I want to parent my kids. This is not how I want to show up for my friends. This is not going to help me run a 5K in the time I want to do it. So leaving that behind, actually, I was 38, 39 years old when I learned that lesson. It took me a really long time to see that there was an alternative, because so many things have been telling me for a while that there weren't. And it's not easy leaving it behind, because you have to retrain your neural pathways, and you have to show up to events that make you anxious and not deal with it by having a glass of something nice. And I am so grateful that I've stuck with it, and so proud of myself for doing it. And it remains probably my greatest achievement. And whilst I say it was hard, the other message I want to say, if for anyone struggling with their drinking out there, it's hard, but it's not that hard. Like, it's not impossible. If you're clinically dependent, I'm not speaking to you or for you. If you need medical help and intervention, I am not your person. But for anyone who's what's commonly called a grey area drinker, it's not impossible. If I can do it, I mean, I would have been the person least likely to do this, but I've done it, and I've met so many people who have also done it, and nobody ever regrets giving up alcohol, ever.
Including myself. That's one of the things we have in common. That's how we came to know each other, was through these same circles of training to be sober coaches, and learning more about what it means to be able to break the relationship with alcohol, and break some of the existing norms and the lore out there, and the current beliefs and so forth. But rather than get into that, I'd love to get back to your personal experience here, though. So you're saying you were sitting on a comma in your relationship with alcohol, and 2019 was when that relationship changed and you started to get off the comma. I'd love to spend just a little bit more time on, what the experience was like for you as you were getting to this place where you were feeling stuck in your relationship with alcohol and deciding you wanted something different to happen. Let's go into question 2. When you think about that relationship you had with alcohol and sitting on that comma, what did that create for you? What was some of that like for you that made you realize I need to change something?
I mean, this is the kind of dark and gritty stuff. It wasn't very nice, Paul. It wasn't very nice. And the realization that I'm not necessarily a great person when I haven't slept well, when I've got a hangover. I just wasn't showing up for myself. So we've talked about my energy. I'm an energetic person. I'm a morning person. Like, I do stuff and I get stuff done. And that's key to who I am and my personality. And I'm known for being a doer. And I love that. But all of a sudden, I wasn't doing what I said I'd do. I wasn't showing up in the way I wanted to show up. So maybe that would be, I'd booked a 9 o'clock yoga class. I just wouldn't go, and I'd lose my money and I'd feel disappointed. Or maybe I'd said to my kids, oh, let's make pancakes tomorrow morning. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm not making pancakes. That sounds like hard work and it sounds messy. Just have some Weetabix. And perhaps they'd be like, Mummy, I want to do a jigsaw. And I'm like, nice try. Let's put the telly on. And like, that is not me. That is not who I want to be. That's not how I want to show up. I want to do what I say I'm going to do. And I want to be a playful parent to my children, who now are 8 and 9. So they must have been like 3 and 5 when I ditched the drink. So really still in the zone of playing and Lego and hide and seek and running in the park and going on the swings. I wanted to be that sort of parent and getting involved with that. I'd say also my relationship was really suffering. I am married to a really nice man. We've been married for 12 years. We were together for 2 years before that. He is my person. He is who I want to be with. So why was I spoiling it by drinking too much, which turned me into someone who's a bit argumentative, someone who picked fights, someone who was hypercritical? And I think I talked to someone else about this the other day. We talk a lot about in vino veritas. Actually, I don't think you say the truth when you're drunk. I think you say really ridiculous things that you don't mean and don't stand by. And I would say those ridiculous things to him. And I just felt like he didn't really deserve that. He, on the other hand, annoyingly, is a really nice drunk. He just kind of slows down, he chills out, he's quite fun and funny. And sure, he gets a hangover the next day, but he didn't suffer like I did. He didn't wake at 3 a.m. with an existential crisis in his head. He didn't have terrible anxiety. He didn't get the white wine witch or the beer fear. I found as well, as I aged, like my hangovers were lasting 2 days. That means if I'm drinking 2 or 3 days a week, that means I'm always slightly hungover. I'm not performing either at work or at home or in my relationships in the way that I want to perform. And performance is just such a strong word. I mean, I'm no Olympic athlete here, but I'm just not showing up in the way that reflects who I think I really am. And now I've removed alcohol from the equation. Don't get me wrong, I still find making pancakes really messy. But I'm a lot more present in my relationships. I'm a lot more present with my children. And I do what I say I'm going to do. Like, I cannot tell you the last time I skipped the yoga class I promised I'd go to.
Well, and it sounds like, in addition to all these things that you described, you're also kind of highlighting a little bit that it's like, it's not even as much about the thing, to use pancakes as the example. Pancakes is messy, hungover or sober, but at least you have clarity on why you're choosing not to do pancakes. You're now choosing not to do pancakes because it's messy, but before it was because it was too painful for me to even realize or think about whether it was going to be too messy or not. So
maybe we're not making pancakes because we're going out and we need to get going. Maybe we're not making pancakes because I forgot to buy the eggs. Yeah. But there aren't any other reasons, really. Normally we make pancakes and the kids eat the pancakes and they love it. And it's our routine and it's a thing. And when they grow up and they come home and they say, oh, I don't live home anymore, but Mum, can you make me pancakes on a Saturday? I'll be like, yeah, I can, because that's our thing. And I really love laying down those memories, building those traditions that don't have to be the same as the traditions you had with your own family. Your family doesn't have to look like what your previous family looked like. But I think for me, doing the things my kids want to do, because my eldest is 9. I'm halfway through having him at home, right? So I want to enjoy those times. It's really lovely. It's really lovely being a parent, I think. And I really want to enjoy the good bits of it, because there are really shit bits of parenting. There are really awful, awful bits, particularly in the early days. I'm into the fun stage. I'm into the bit where they're not babies anymore, but they're not teenagers either. So I'm in this magical window where I want to show up and I want to be present, and I don't want to miss a thing, because this stage will end soon. They'll be teenagers. They'll be going out with their friends. They won't want my pancakes because they'll be in bed on a Saturday morning. So now's my time to lean into that. And I cannot imagine a thing that would happen that would make me want to turn back to alcohol.
Yeah. Well, and what I love is that you were very, very clear about the things that you were losing or missing out on as a result of that relationship, and all of the things that you gained as a result of changing that relationship. That's a really powerful story. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about, what did you learn and things like that. But I want to stay with what it was like to sit on this comma just a little bit longer, if we can, because in you telling your story, I think there's a lot of people out there who are going through exactly what you went through, right? And they are trying to imagine possibility because they already have a deep knowing. There's already that voice, that whisper, that little tug, that little pull, but they're not quite there yet. And because everybody's journey is unique, as we both know, right? Everybody has to go in their own timing. But I think one of the questions that people might have, which I think will be very powerful, is let's go back to that flight on that Bangkok
I don't want
day.
to go back to the flight.
No. Well, you share only what you need or
I'll
want to
back.
share.
I'm sitting on the plane.
Yeah, here's what my question is, because this, I think, could be so powerful. And I'm even curious. What happened for you in that moment that you made the decision, I just can't do this again, and I'm not doing this until Friday? Take us back to that moment. Like, what? I guess people would ask the question, like, how did you know? And how did you know you were going to be able to do this?
I've never thought about this in that much depth. So I'm going to tell you what I can remember, but I'm also going to tell you what I know, even though I don't remember it. I know that I'd have been sat on that plane and I'd have had stuff all around me. I'd have been overloaded by stuff because I'm on a plane with small children, and someone had been physically on me or pulling at me. So I'd have felt overwhelmed from my environment.
Mm,
You know how on a plane you're always too hot or too cold, and that with a hangover,
hmm
someone pulling at your sleeve with a hangover, someone asking you for snacks with a hangover. That's all a lot. It's all a lot. And now when I fly by myself, the best thing about flying alone without my kids is nobody asks anything of me. But on that plane, I know people will have been asking things of me that I would have felt incapable of answering. Like, I can't help you right now. I just want to sit here in this pit of my own hangover. I don't want to get you a snack. I don't want to read you a story. I don't want to let you look out the window. But I know, so yeah, there'd have been a lot kind of on me, and I'd have been feeling uncomfortable. I also would say that moment carried the weight of maybe 25 years drinking. I read
hmm
something recently, and I think it takes, and as you say, everyone's journey is unique, but it's about 8 years of thinking about it before people ditch the drink.
mm
8 years of going, oh, is this good for me? Is this right for me? This makes me feel shit, but I'll probably keep going. Or 8 years of waking up at 3 a.m. So I had that 8 years, but maybe it was 25 years. I had the history of my drinking weighing on me. And some of those times, I'm not going to lie, some of those times drinking were really fun. I had some great
hmm
nights out. I had some wild times. I met some brilliant people. But when I think about what alcohol brought, maybe I'd have done that without the alcohol. Maybe I'd have had just as good as, I don't know, because I can't repeat that time. But when I think about what alcohol benefit was bringing to me, I sat on that plane and I thought, I can't do it. I cannot do this week of busy work meetings, of drop off and pick up at school, of cooking dinners, of phoning my parents, and of remembering birthdays and all of those things. I just can't do it with alcohol in the mix. And all the lessons I'd learned over the last 8 years, 25 years, all those years of drinking, I knew that to be true. That fact became hyper apparent. And I just knew, and it didn't take a time to build. I just knew there was a moment on that flight, and I just knew I can't survive this work week. I can't survive this personal week with alcohol in the mix.
mm
And I think maybe somewhere very, very deep down that I didn't acknowledge at that time, there might have been a thought that said, what will happen on Friday? Because Friday is what's going to have changed by Friday. But I didn't allow myself at that time, or until really recently, to think about forever. I never ditched the drink thinking, well, I'm never drinking again. Because even now, I'm 43, I've got a lot of life left, right? I do not
hmm
know what's going to happen in the rest of my life, what misery and joy and wonder and all sorts is going to hit me. So I don't know if I'm ever going to have another drink again. But right now, I cannot think of a reason why I would. And on that
mm
plane, I couldn't think about forever because it was too big. But I suspect that 0.01% of my being was like, this is probably going to be a bigger decision than you think.
I'm hearing a number of things. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that and answering that question. The things that come up for me are that it wasn't just this, oh, I'm drinking and enjoying the drinking, and then suddenly one day the decision just took care of itself for me, and then I wasn't drinking anymore. Yeah, and
Oh,
that's
I
not
wish
it.
it was
And
that
and and
easy.
and A, it's not that easy, but B, it's also this is what happens when I talk to people who ask me about my experiences. The voice was always there, was already there. I was already doing the work from the minute that I started thinking, probably shouldn't be doing this much, right? And so all of that, as you described it, that 8 years of contemplation, regardless of how many years it is for each person, right? Like that is the work. You are doing that work, and it's sort of like investing, right? Financially, that money is going into the bank. Those thoughts are going into that bank, and then you got to
Yeah.
that point where it was just like, today is just too goddamn painful for me to even think about repeating this pattern tomorrow. So let's see how the pattern's going to change tomorrow, the next day. And I know a lot of times you've talked to people, I've talked to people, I've experienced it myself. You've probably experienced it. You say that the next day it doesn't change, but this time it did. And it's because of all of that.
Yeah.
Like, you had been doing the work. Just because you didn't quit sooner didn't mean that you weren't preparing yourself. That's what I believe I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. I agree. And I also think by the time, well, for me, I don't know what your story's like, but by the time I ditched the drink for good, I had already done dry January 2 or 3 times. I'd done sober October. I'd done 10 days here and there without a drink. I had experimented half-heartedly with sober curiosity. I'd probably read some Quit Lit. I'd probably followed some people on social who didn't drink because I was vaguely interested. So that flirtation with the sober curious lifestyle, I think, is the sign that something might need to change with someone's relationship with alcohol. And I think if you're asking yourself if you drink too much, and if you're asking yourself if your life would be better without alcohol, then you probably want to experiment with what the other side of the fence looks like, because no one's going to hold a gun to your head and make you do this forever.
And just like you experimented with trying alcohol in the first place, you didn't just come out of the womb and, saying this with a little bit of humor, but not good humor. Mom didn't put booze in your baby bottle. We know that does occur in life sometimes.
It didn't happen to me. It definitely didn't happen to me.
No, and we have to learn to be drinkers. So you have to learn how to return to sobriety to begin with, right?
And it took me, I had my first drink probably on holiday with my parents to France. It's a very European thing. You have watered down wine. I don't even know how old I'd have been, but I definitely remember having some kind of baby sham sweet sparkling wine at Christmas when I was 14, and I was going out drinking with my friends when I was 14. I definitely got drunk for the first time at 14. So wow, that's a long time, right, that I've been drinking and getting good, in inverted commas, in drinking and practicing my drinking. So yeah, the fact that it's taken me some time to work out how to get off that and see what an alternative is like. It doesn't happen overnight, because you didn't drink just for one overnight. You drank for years. But for me, honestly, Paul, the headspace I've got back, not thinking about alcohol, that I've got back, not waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning and worrying about my behavior. And that thing as well, when you're trying to be a moderate drinker, when you're like, well, I won't drink on Saturday, but I will have a glass of wine on Sunday with lunch. And then, oh no, I'm driving in the afternoon, so I won't do that. So maybe I will drink on Saturday. Like, what a boring thing to think about. That's so dull. Think about something really cool and amazing and brilliant instead.
Yeah.
Spend your limited time on this earth thinking about stuff that is wondrous and wonderful, because we have enough life admin in our day-to-day without adding alcohol and moderation to that.
Well, and I think too, in hearing you and then thinking about my own experience, the one thing that I would interject and kind of put on this recording for people who are listening is, if you know you're not clinically dependent, or you don't suspect you are, that's a different conversation. You can contact Anna or me, or we can put you in touch with other people if this is something that you need to talk about. But not to plug that, what worked for me and what I'm hearing works for you was not putting too much into, well, society says this is too many, or I'm allowed to have that many and stuff like that. Just going with your own experience and knowing if you think or feel you're having too much, then listen to that. If you suspect that your relationship with alcohol isn't working for you, then go with that. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm good up to X number of glasses per week because that's what society says. If you're only having 1 glass a week and you don't feel good about that, then listen to yourself, trust yourself, right? And that's what my experience was, is I quit worrying about, I should be able to have X amount of glasses per week or whatever, because I wasn't able to. And it didn't matter what everybody else was able to drink. And it wasn't about keeping up with other people. I just got to a point where, which sounds like you got to on the plane, where this not drinking tomorrow can't be as hard as drinking tomorrow is going to be. So it's funny how the tables can turn, right?
Yeah. And it's really interesting you say that. So I'm in the UK, so we have NHS guidelines on how much you can, in inverted commas, drink per week. And it's different for a man than it is for a woman. And let me tell you, I outdrank those limits every single week. When my doctor asked me how much I drank, I would lie. And I cannot tell you how much I love saying to my doctor now, I don't drink, because of so many times I was there going, ooh, what's a unit? I don't know. I probably do that in a night. And I had a perfectly functioning life, but I definitely threw alcohol, too much alcohol into the mix, but it was really normal because everyone around me did the same. And actually, to a certain extent, still do. I'm still married to a man who loves a drink. My friends are still boozers. And do you know what? Well, it doesn't matter because that's their choice and their issue. Maybe it's not an issue. But for me, my decision was the amount I am drinking, and it doesn't even matter how much it is, but the amount I am drinking is not serving me. Alcohol is not serving me in the way I thought it was. It's not bringing anything good into my life because I can have all that good stuff. I can go to a wedding and have a really great time. I can go out for dinner with my girlfriends and have a really great time. I can go on a date with my husband and enjoy myself. I cannot think how alcohol would make that any better now. And I'm still having the fun. And the other thing I did is when I ditched the drink, I did it pre-pandemic. So do you remember that bit in the early pandemic? People were either getting hyper fit or they were really drunk all the time. And so I managed to avoid that kind of that pit. But I know a lot of people really struggled in the pandemic and haven't necessarily managed to rein their drinking in. And I am just so grateful that I didn't drink through the pandemic because I don't know what it would have done to me. That was a really tough time. It was tough for everybody, but it was a particularly kind of tough, I think, if you were with young children in the house.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Anna, you have already shared with us quite a few things you've learned about yourself, but in honor of question 3, what else would you share that you have learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma or just learned in general?
I've learned that I'm a superhero because ditching the drink is hard and I've done it. I've learned that what's in my glass is the least interesting thing about me. Nobody cares what you're drinking. Nobody cares. I've learned that my timing was really good. So I always reference this lovely friend of mine who ditched the drink about 12 years ago. And there were no alcohol-free things for her to drink in the bar. And she still did it. I did it in the time of 0% gin and Prosecco and seed lip and all these wonderful, wonderful drinks. And they just get better. There's just more and more stuff out there week in, week out. So zeitgeist-wise, I was on the nail. I've learned that my energy is really powerful and a really big part of who I am. And hopefully my energy is coming across in this, but it's a really positive energy. And I'm not interested in talking about the negative effects of alcohol. If you want to educate yourself on what alcohol does to your body, you can do that. 7 different cancers, 200 diseases. It ruins your sleep. It stops your body behaving properly. It inhibits all your organs. I don't really care about that because I didn't care about that for all the time I was doing that damage to myself. What I care about is the fact that I step into each weekend kind of fresh and happy and full of optimism and positivity, and I'm not hungover from the night before, and I kind of make the most of each moment, not each moment on a kind of rainy Tuesday, for example, but like I do generally make the most of my time and my energy. And I think looking at the positives, and you touched on this earlier, what I've gained, I don't look at what I've lost because it's one thing, but when I look at what I've gained, it's a multitude of things. And I think I'm also really chuffed to be giving my kids an example of what sober can look like, because it can look like so many things. But I think typically people see it as really boring. My life is not boring. I am not boring. My life is full and full of wonderful people, full of wonderful things. I didn't have that example growing up. I had a great example. My parents are amazing. I had a lovely family, but I never knew that not drinking could be a thing unless you're an alcoholic. And that was a terrible thing to be. I didn't realize you could just choose not to drink because it was just an amazing option. And I think my final point, I always assumed if I ever quit drinking, it would be because, I'd woken up in a gutter with one shoe on, missing a tooth, and no idea where my house keys were. I've never woken up in that position. I've woken up in with some fairly broken memories and missing belongings, but I've never woken up in that position. You don't have to hit rock bottom to ditch the drink. You don't have to be at your wit's end and utterly miserable to reassess your relationship with alcohol. And actually, if you are in that position, gosh, it's going to be a really tough thing to do. Whereas actually, if you catch yourself before you get to that point, or maybe you never get to that point at all, think about what you can let into your life. And that's my advice for anyone doing dry January at the moment as well. Really notice what you can let in and what you can bring in, because it's really easy to sit at home in the short days and the terrible weather and think, oh, well, this is miserable. I'm not going to the pub. I'm not doing anything. Well, why aren't you going to the pub? Because it's January. It's got nothing to do with dry January. You're not going to the pub because no one's going to the pub this month. So go out, do things, have a great time. Don't let not drinking give you a shit month, because what I want people to realize with dry January is that life is still out there and life is still full and amazing and brilliant. Just go get it.
I really appreciate how, you share these things, because it really does change the narrative for around this topic in particular, right? That, you don't have to believe everything that they say out there about, alcohol versus being an alcoholic. There's just we won't get into all of that, but there's just a lot of narrative out there that even in people wanting to change their relationship with alcohol and quit drinking, there's narrative to shame you back into drinking out there.
Yeah,
so
there definitely
a
is.
lot of different schools of thought and a lot of different things that you can subscribe to. And we'll table that for another conversation. But I do want to ask question 4, and you have already answered this one a bit, but let me ask it in case there's anything you would add, which is what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
Loads. I will say that getting off the comma, stopping drinking. Don't forget that in that time, there's also been a global pandemic, which has changed so much about the world. But I moved out of London. Maybe I would have done that anyway as a byproduct of the pandemic, but I was a Londoner through and through. I loved London. I loved the pollution and the litter and the noise and the lights. And actually, we've moved our young family out of London and we've established a beautiful home by the sea in Kent. It's not a California coastline, Paul, but it's not bad. And I've taken a career pivot. I've moved out of sales, which I've done for all of my career. And I've moved into a more strategic role, which I love. And I don't know if I'd have been brave enough to do that without the push I've had. The biggest thing that's changed for me, the biggest thing is my relationship with my children. Now, I was not a bad mum before. I was not a bad mum. I showed up, I did stuff. And yes, I made pancakes. And occasionally, even though I didn't want to, I'd do 100-piece jigsaw. But I have so much more tolerance for the never-ending stories about Pokemon. I will play the game, would you rather be eaten by a megalodon or trampled on by a brontosaurus? Like, I will play all of these games, and I have patience and time for this in a way that I didn't before. And I think I'm generally I'm a lighter human. I don't carry the anxiety and I don't carry the kind of mental load that we talked about before. Do I drink today? Don't I drink today? Will I drink tomorrow? How much will I drink tomorrow? How much am I spending on wine? I don't carry that. I never think twice about who's going to drive to an event. I'm just like, I'll drive. So I don't carry that. So I'm lighter for that. But I also feel better. I mean, I was on antidepressants after my second child, and I've come off those. And I know that my child's growing up, so maybe I would have come off them anyway. But I certainly felt empowered to stop taking them because I wasn't also putting an actual depressant into my body. I wasn't putting something that was proven to mess with my brain chemistry into my body that then these antidepressants had to work really hard to counteract. And I feel like, having had my first winters off antidepressants, and winter's tough, man. Winters are easier. Life is easier and brighter. And don't get me wrong, I'm not Pollyanna. I still wake up in a bad mood, or I'll have a bad night's sleep, or I'll have days where I just can't be asked. But most of the time, I really like my life. I really like the people I surround myself with, who are the same people I was hanging out with 5 years ago, by the way. I didn't lose my friends. I didn't change my friendship circle, but I have actually made a lot of new friends and a lot of new connections like you, Paul, which I'm super grateful for. So yeah, I've lost a lot of the weight, a lot of the sluggishness, a lot of the low mood. And I've shown up for my kids. And I think with all of that, I've kind of got to know, this sounds really wanky, I'm not a very woo person, but I feel like I know myself more. I really do. I know what makes me
Mm.
happy. It's being outside, it's moving my body, it's hanging out with my kids, it's good conversation with my friends. And so I do more of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's powerful. It's powerful, very descriptive. And what I also appreciate is the message that you're sharing in that, which is, all the things didn't necessarily change. You were able to do the things before, you're able to do the things now. What has changed is the ease with which you're able to do those things, B, your ability to be more present and more interested in those things. And you removed a
Yes.
lot of weight as you've described, right? So it's not that, you magically created a whole brand new life and went off and had all these superpowers and things like that, as much as it just changed your relationship with the things that were in your life and freed you up to bring in new things and made you powerful enough to release some things that weren't serving you.
Yeah, I think that,
Nice.
being present and interested in what I was doing. Like all I've ever wanted, this makes me sound really sad, but all I ever wanted as a young girl, I wanted to marry a nice man and have beautiful babies. And I've
Mm-hmm.
married a nice man and I've got two beautiful little boys. And like that's everything my heart desires. And so I had everything, I had all of that. And I still wasn't that happy and I still felt crap a lot of the time. And why wasn't I enjoying? Like I'm lucky enough to have had my dreams come true. Why wasn't I enjoying this? And now I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it and I'm grateful for it. And I realize that not everybody has, even those simple dreams come true. And that I realized that like bad things happen to good people. My nearest and dearest are suffering. I am very lucky. And so having had those stars align, I want to enjoy it. I really, really want to enjoy it.
That's powerful. Let's jump into the last question because it brings all of this together, right? So, Anna, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Oh, it looks like freedom. It looks like lightness. It looks like smiling and laughter. It looks like being with my family. It looks like new connections and relationship whilst doubling down on your old ones. Getting off that comma is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Mm.
And it means that if I'm ever on another comma, I know I can get off it. I know this too shall pass. I know that I can overcome. So that's really empowering. And you know that you'll not have this too, Paul, but people come up to you and they're like, I could never stop drinking. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, that's so boring. Of course you can. Like, I don't even have the energy to go into this. Like, I'm not some kind of superhero. I don't have powers that you don't. I'm not Harry Potter with the magic wand. I just don't pick up alcohol. That's the
Mm-hmm.
one difference between me and that person. Oh, but I could never stop drinking. You're so good. I'm not good. I'm not good. Good are the people who were out saving lives and doing amazing work in the parts of the world ravaged by torment and disaster. I'm not good. I'm just someone who's worked out that my life is loads better without alcohol in it. And one day, that person who's like, oh, I could never give up alcohol, although I feel a bit hungover today and I don't feel like, one day that person might work that out too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be here to help them and champion them and support them. But what I've done is not miraculous. It is not superhuman. It is something that normal, ordinary people do every single day. And again, I'm not talking about people who have terrible, ravaging addictions. That is not what we're talking about here. But normal people can stop drinking. People without addictive problems can stop drinking quite simply. You just don't have another drink. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'd offer a reframe because when somebody feels confident enough to come and approach you and say, "Oh, I could never do what you've done," the reframe opportunity here is, well, of course you could. What makes you
Mhm.
believe you can't, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about being a superhero. Like you described it. People see you as a superhero because they see you doing something that they don't believe that they can do. But it starts with the belief. And if they're already questioning it, an acknowledgement, the fact that they even came up to you and said, "Oh, I could never do it." It's like something tells me you want to, though. You're already doing the work and do the work on your time, do the work at your pace. And there's no shame in whatever choice that you make. Right. So, but like I would offer and challenge and invite you to take every single time that somebody says that to you as a compliment, because what they're really doing is acknowledging you for doing it and acknowledging some level of admiration in what you've done and the example that you've set.
Well, thank you. That's a lovely
Yeah.
way of looking at it. I feel like I've been really mean there, because
Not at
obviously if
all.
someone came up and said that, I would talk about my journey. But this is, yes, it might be a compliment, but anybody can do this. And if they want to try, like, look at people like us. Look at, there are hundreds of people out there in the sober space who can offer you inspiration, advice. Go lean into it, because it's a really brilliant community.
And it shows what an interesting relationship we have as drinkers and non-drinkers, right? Because each of us has our own stories. I can think about what a complete brat I was when I was a drinker, and I'd have parties and people would come over. It's like, oh, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm like, we don't serve those kind of drinks here. You'll have to help yourself,
Oh,
but now that and I was such an ass to anybody who didn't drink, like, who would not want to do that? That's got to be so boring. That's no fun in that. Now I'll look back at the way that I was, and it's just like, it's just interesting the way we'll kind of knit at each other, right? But
it's almost, and I'm not calling you a bully, but it's kind of bullying, isn't it? The way
it is, absolutely.
Whereas actually now, again, the zeitgeist has changed, and now it's like, oh my God, well, come and look at this wide array of alcohol-free cocktails I have, and come look at these 0% gins, and there's lots of drinks. So first, there's lots of stuff, and secondly, let me make you something delicious, because you are on a journey, my friend, and I'm excited to see where it takes you.
Absolutely. Anna, so what would you acknowledge yourself for from this conversation?
What would I acknowledge myself for? I mean, I'm proud of myself for ditching the drink. I'm proud of my family and my friends for supporting me. I'm proud of my network who've championed me, and the kind of sober people I've met along the way. I'd also like to kind of boost anyone else thinking about sobriety or a different way with alcohol, and let them know that there is a path out there for them.
I so appreciate this topic. It's very personal to me, and you've been so open in sharing. Where would people find you, or how can people contact you if they wanted to get in touch with you and maybe learn more about your journey and your experience?
Thank you. I am at Anna Sudbury Sober, SUDBURY, on Instagram. www.annasudburysober.com on the web. My DMs are always open. I love talking about this stuff. So whether you want to message me and say, oh gosh, I can't believe I could ever do that, and challenge me in that way, or whether you want to message me with a brilliant cocktail recipe, or whether you just think you need a little bit of help and a nudge in the right direction, I'd love to be in touch. I'd love to hear from you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And of course, as always, that'll be in the show notes, so people can just go straight to the links there. And the last thing that I want to cover here, because we do it in every episode, and I believe that it's an important part of your story and also an important part of the work that we're all doing here with this platform. And that is, who else in your circle or in your community would you like to boost or promote or give a voice to? And that can be individual creators and people that you know. It can be organizations, causes. And of course, we'll put this in the show notes with links as well. But who would you like to acknowledge and to give a voice to?
I mean, the people I love the most are my family and my dog. I'm obsessed with my dog, but my family, my lovely husband. And with absolutely no agenda and not wanting to come across as holier than thou. We've talked a lot about superheroes, and I've said very firmly, I am not a superhero. I might have something you want to achieve, and you can set out and you can achieve that, but I'm not a superhero. So I want to recognize those who really help those who have less than others. Like, if you work for the MSF or the Red Cross or the Disasters Emergency Committee, you are my heroes. We are 10 days into the new year, and we all know what's going on in the Middle East, and we've all seen what's happening in Japan, and there are 100,000 other places I could reference around the world. So please, please, please support those communities. And if you're in the UK, we have something that I believe is very special. It's The Big Issue. It's a magazine produced by and sold by homeless people. They had a really tough time in COVID. I subscribed during that time. I still do. Buy The Big Issue next time you see it, please. If you donate to a food bank, I absolutely love that about you. Buy an extra box of cereal and pop it in the checkout box next time you go to the supermarket. I wish we didn't have to, Paul, but let's keeping on making the world a better place, one action at a time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I've captured all of this in the show notes. And even though these organizations, a number of these organizations are UK based, where whatever country you live in, check out this site or these sites, these links, and then find comparable organizations in your own community if that's important to you as well.
Yeah, and a couple of them are global, actually. I think they're phenomenal. And
wonderful.
When I think about the misery and suffering out there, it's awful. We've got to do what we can, right?
Absolutely. Anna, this has been such a great conversation. I'm so glad we got you on the show, and I look forward to more conversations that you and I will have off the camera or off the microphone. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast.
What an honor it is to witness these stories from these amazing human beings, and today's guest was no exception. I invite you to think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. I can't tell you how magical it can be to set aside your expectations and just let your thoughts flow out of your head and onto paper. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to do anything with it, but you can be amazed at what comes out of your thoughts and onto paper and what that can do for you. I know freestyle journaling has been a powerful practice in my life for a very long time. You just never know what you might discover about yourself. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. Follow me on social media at Off the Comma, and also look for upcoming workshops and events at offthecomma.com, or better yet, go to offthecomma.com and sign up for my mailing list and let me bring the news directly to you. I am passionate about keeping this podcast ad-free so that we create a safe container for people to be able to tell their stories uninterrupted by commercials and promotions. I currently cover all the production costs, and I'm happy to continue doing so. And I'm also open to and appreciative of any donations that anyone would like to contribute. This is nothing more than to be able to support the podcast and cover some of the monthly editing and producing and equipment costs that are associated with this podcast. So look for the donations link in the podcast descriptions wherever you find this podcast. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast, and more importantly, spread the good word. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. As always, keep noticing.